No, you fucking suck. Get off the stage.
Okay, YouTube. I get that you hate part 2s, but you don't have to make me think I have an audience.
We are not making you believe you have an audience. People actually watched your first try at releasing How to Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh yeah. I forgot I got 113 views in the first 2 days of uploading How to Yu-Gi-Oh! The original. Really gotta work on adjusting music better.
Anyway, if you'll excuse me, I have to remove the like button now.
Okay, so I got some genuine feedback about How to Yu-Gi-Oh! Within the first couple days of it being released, and it touched some of the areas I missed, but at least I succeeded in the best part out of all the parts in How to Yu-Gi-Oh! I was actually funny and made someone laugh. Okay, though, seriously, Omar pointed out some very good points, specifically some terms I left to the imagination of the viewer to figure out, and contact fusion, where I just didn't elaborate further. Also, as a disclaimer, if I mispronounced your name, I'm horribly sorry.
Wait, so there's no way I can fuse with someone that I'm in contact with?
Sadly, Sexel doesn't exist, so no. Anyway, contact fusion is fusion without polymerization that was solidified with Elemental Hero Neos. The gimmick of Neospatian and Neos monsters is if you have 2 of them on the field, you can return both of them to your deck and summon a fusion monster from your extra deck, with the main drawback being that Neospatians and Neos fusions is, during the end phase, they just kind of dip out, and the only way to make them stay is to light up the room with some instant Neo space around them so they think that there's Neo space when there really isn't, or just have Neo space for the extra benefit so then those guys will just be distracted by how shiny it is and stay.
So contact fusion is only exclusive to Neos?
No. Contact fusion happens whenever a monster says it can be special summoned without polymerization. As well, fusion summoning can be a little bit odd. On one hand, it can be something that can save you if you have a very good fusion boss monster, but on the other hand, if you brick and don't have any other options, then you can't really do anything with your hand to actually summon those fusion monsters, or even be able to use the fusion monster's effects to keep comboing. It's also the same with just tribute summoning. If your opponent is ready for you, then they can figure out a way around the tribute summon monster if it doesn't have very much protection when it's summoned, and then you just wasted a tribute summon and have 2 more monsters in the graveyard if it was level 6 or even worse, 3.
Cool. Although in that comment, there were terms that you did miss. Some of them I actually don't remember.
So, running through the terms really quickly, then target means to select a card for an effect, although the effect isn't applied until resolution. Destroy is when you send a card to the graveyard in the middle of a chain, or just when you slap another monster using your monster, where usually spells and traps remain on the field until the chain. Destroying them makes it leave early, but the effects can still apply if it is during a chain, but if it's not during a chain, then it's just a fancy term used for, okay, I slap your monster, it goes to the graveyard. Returning means that the card is moved to the position stated on the card, being moved to the hand or added to the deck. And something that wasn't mentioned, negating.
Wait, but I already...
Negating is the antithesis of "You've triggered my trap card!" The creme de la creme of all Yu-Gi-Oh! Lines, preventing your opponent's effect from working all together. There was a suggestion to include managing your resources, but I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't manage mine very well. It looks like I do, but that's because I studied how to use utopias, because somebody beat my ass with them so much when Master Duel came out, Neuron Activation took over, then I beat his ass, then he beat my ass with Ultimate Leo, then I added Dragonar and Leo to beat his ass again, and then he pulled out the Witchcrafters, which is the equivalent of pulling out the belt. Very long story short, it was fun, and I'm thankful for him beating my ass until I got it, but for the rest of the decks I run, I wing it all out of the time. Cyber Dragon, I did net deck, but added my own little twists into it to try and make it unique. Then after playing it started clicking, and I figured out how to play it with little prior knowledge. Because my gut said, hey, what if you did this thing? And it turned out it worked. Sky Strikers are the closest to managing your resources that I've gotten. The way they work is you only have really 2 monsters with 6 of each and some staples like Maxi or Ash Blossom, for my personal opinion, for good measure. The way they want to be played is to summon one of the 2 Sky Striker monsters and then link summon it into one of the 4 armors and adapt your strategy based on what your opponent is doing, giving you the capability to even counter Eldritch. I didn't get footage for it because I couldn't save the replay because I was maxed on replays, but I swear I did it. Fear me, Eldritch! Sky Strikers also get stronger effects based on how many spells are in the graveyard, so it's usually a risk of boosting the power of your Sky Strikers or keeping the spell cards for the extra effects later. I usually just go with my gut, which could be considered following the heart of the cards, but it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. All I know, I let myself down instead of my deck letting me down, because usually my deck comes through most of the time, unless it's Excuse Fury, in which case it sometimes has a hissy fit, but comes in later. Lastly is another end of Yugioh. You can set up a very good field during your first turn. May even be impossible ones to get past. But what if you're not first? This is where some tips can be implemented to break the opponent's field, one by one. Or by everything. More than likely by everything, if you're lucky, but most of the time. First of all, if you're going second, you get an extra card because of first turn draw being removed. But it gives you a slight leg up if you get the card that you need from that extra draw. Typically, if you're going second, you want a card to use to fish for mainly Ash Blossom. If you can do like a spare search that's not your main search that you want to use, you can bait out the Ash Blossom, and when they go for the negate on that card, you can use another card to look for another card from your deck. There is also another factor, which involves a monster called Battle de Fleur, or Tech, Cyber Dragon Infinite. These two have the effect where they can get rid of a card by either munching on it like it was unattended takings, or straight up stabbing them, both only doable on their turn. But on the opponent's turn, or if the opponent decides to play a card during their turn, if you try to set up on them in any way, spell, trap, monster, they will negate you, stab you, and then, well, generally that's just it, but it stops you from playing the game. Once the negates have been baited, you can feel free to go off with your combo, making sure you use your effects to either raise your power stronger than theirs for big damage, or making use of removal cards to get rid of the opponent's monsters and spells without laying your monster's claw, finger, staff, sword, or fin on them. Lightning Storm is also a really good option for this alongside Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster. Lightning Storm lets you either destroy all the face-up attack mode monsters your opponent summoned, or destroy every spell and trap they have activated, or Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster also achieve these effects, but one's semi-limited, one's limited, so you have to have the heart of the cards to pull them turn 2. A neat trick that you have to be a maniac to pull off is instead of destroying their field on your turn, you can just either destroy their field immediately or stop them from even setting up a field. If you have any staples like Maxi or Ash and conveniently draw them as your starting hand, they're effective immediately. Maxi can be used if your opponent special summons a lot, while Ash Blossom can be used to shut down and in particular summon or search depending on what the card negates. And as another disclaimer, I am not an expert on where to aim Ash, so go with your gut. I gotta be honest, I don't know how to break unbreakable fields with every deck, so I won't go much farther into it than this. Howdy Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a lot poured into it when making the script, and I made a lot of changes to it while audio recording because I either thought a bit wasn't funny or I could explain something better than the script, and these details were left out. Originally, the ambiguousness of this wasn't really directed towards my friends, to despite what the comment might think, but actually towards the viewer, because instead of looking at the best decks to play to win every game with in one turn, I wanted the viewer to experiment, read through cards, find art that looked cool, build a deck related to that card, and put their own heart into their deck. That's what the Heart of the Cards was meant to represent, being able to put your heart and soul into creating and trusting each other on the battlefield enough to not let each other down. Granted, there are decks that have a lot of staple cards, so they can be good and you usually need multiple copies of a card to stay consistent with a strategy, but even with those inconsistencies, we all have the ability to get creative with the decks we built, even if the decks may have been built before. Although, now that I think about it, I don't think many of you will be satisfied with that conclusion. So, rather than scold you for stealing an idea, I think I'll help you get some joy of it instead. Starting with a light that shines upon the numbers as a beacon of hope. Number 39, Utopia!